Hey there, YouTube. Before I get into the video, let me remind you, if you like my content, hit that like and subscribe button. And if you feel the need to support me, hit me up on my Patreon at patreon.com/uncommonramen, capital U, capital R. I do all this in my free time, so any amount of support can help me bring more of this content to you more often. Okay, today we are going to be looking at Hawkball of the Surging Soul. This is a Merfolk Explore deck. It is based off the Precon. And there is actually only, I want to say, between 15 and 20 upgrades to this. So most of this deck actually stayed the same. I'll try to point out the upgrades when I get to them. But out of the box, this deck was actually pretty decent. So Hawkball of the Surging Soul is 2, a green and a blue. For a 3/3, at the beginning of combat on your turn, each Merfolk creature you control explores. Whenever Hawkball of the Surging Soul attacks, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. If you don't, draw a card. Okay. Okay, so we're going to take a look at creatures. Wow, there's a layout. There's a lot more than I thought. All right. We're going to start out here with a Benthic Biomancer. This is 1 blue for a 1/1. For 1 and a blue, you can adapt 1. Whenever 1 or more 1/1 counters are put on Benthic Biomancer, draw a card and then discard a card. We've got Cold-Eyed Selkie for 1 and 2 hybrid green-blue mana for a 1/1. It has Island Walk. Whenever Cold-Eyed Selkie deals combat damage to a player, you may draw that many cards. We've got Deeproot Elite for 1 and a green. It's a 1/1. Whenever another Merfolk enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target Merfolk you control. We got Deeproot Historian for 3 and a green. It's a 3/3. Merfolk and Druid cards in your graveyard have Retrace. We got Emperor Mihail II for 1 and 2 blue. It is a 3/3. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast Merfolk spells from the top of your library, and whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, you may pay 1. If you do, create a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token. I don't remember if this one was... I think this was an addition. Yes, I'm pretty sure this was an addition. We have Evolution Sage for 2 and a green. For a 3/2, it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, proliferate. We have Herald of the Secret Streams for 3 and a blue. It's a 2/3. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. Kiora's Follower for a green and a blue. It's a 2/2. You can tap it to untap another target permanent. Kopala, Warden of the Waves, 1 and 2 blue for a 2/2. Spells your opponents cast that target a Merfolk you control cost 2 more to cast, and abilities your opponents activate that target a Merfolk you control cost 2 more to activate. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazga, 1 a green and a blue for a 2/4. Tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena, Tyrant of Orazga, can't be blocked this turn. Tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control, draw a card, and type 5 untapped Merfolk you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. Lord of Atlantis for 2 blue. It's a 2/2. All Merfolk in play gain Island Walk and +1/+1. This card is, or while this card is in play. This is an addition to the deck. We got Master of the Pearl Trident for 2 blue. It's a 2/2. Other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Island Walk. Merfolk Cave Diver for 2 and a blue. It's a 2/4. Whenever a creature you control explores, Merfolk Cave Diver gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. Merfolk Mistbinder, 1 green, 1 blue for a 2/2. Other Merfolk you control get +1/+1. Merfolk Skydiver, 1 green, 1 blue for a 1/1 with flying. When Merfolk Skydiver enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And for 3 a green and a blue, you can proliferate. Merfolk Sovereign for 1 and 2 blue. It's a 2/2. Other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1. You can tap this to have target Merfolk creature can't be blocked this turn. We got Marrow Reegery for 2 and a blue. It's a 2/2. Other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1. And whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, you may tap or untap target permanent. Metallic Mimic for 2, it's a 2/1. As Metallic Mimic enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Metallic Mimic is the chosen type in addition to its other types. Each other creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Mist Dancer for 4 and a blue. This is a 3/3 with flying. Other merfolk you control get +1/+0 and have flying. It has Encore for 5 and 2 blue. Nikanzil, Current Conductor, for 1 green and 1 blue. It is a 2/3. Whenever a creature you control explores a land, whenever a creature you control explores a land, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, and whenever a creature you control explores a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on Nikanzil, Current Conductor. Prime Speaker Zagana for 2 green and 2 blue. It is a 1/1. Prime Speaker Zagana enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. When Prime Speaker Zagana enters the battlefield, draw cards equal to its power. Realm Walker for 2 and a green. It is a 2/3 with Changeling. As Realm Walker enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells of the chosen type from the top of your library. Roaming Throne for 4. It is a 4/4 with Ward 2. As Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. We got Seafloor Oracle for 2 and 2 blue. It is 2/3. Whenever a merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I did forget, the Roaming Throne is an addition to this deck. We got Sea Hunter for 2 and 2 blue. It is a 2/2. You can pay 3 and tap it to search your library for a merfolk card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. This is also an addition. Singer of the Swift Rivers for 1, a green and a blue. It is a 3/2 with flash. When Singer of Swift Rivers enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on target creature you control. You may cast merfolk spells as though they had flash. Stony Brook Banneret for 1 and a blue. It has it's a 1/1 with Island Walk. Merfolk spells and wizard spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Surge Spanner, 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2. When Surge Spanner becomes tapped, you may pay 1 and a blue. If you do, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Sveloon, of the Sea and Sky for 1 and 2 blue. It is a 3/4. Sveloon of the Sea and Sky has Indestructible as long as you control at least 2 other merfolk, and whenever Sveloon attacks, you draw a card, and other merfolk you control have Ward 1. Tatiova Benthic Druid for 3, a green and a blue. It is a 3/3. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life and draw a card. This is just an upgraded art. This was already in the deck. Thieving Skydiver for 1 and a blue. It is a 2/1 with kicker X. X can't be 0. It has flying. Whenever Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. I believe this is an addition. I don't remember if this was in the deck. I might have just upgraded it. Tishana, Voice of Thunder is 5, a green and a blue for a star. Tishana, Voice of Thunder's power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever Tishana enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control. Topography Tracker, 2 and a green for a 2/2. When Topography Tracker enters the battlefield, create a map token. If a creature you control would explore, instead it explores, then it explores again. Tributary Instructor for 3 and a green. It is Mentor, it's a 4/4. It has Mentor. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. Vidalian Hexcatcher for 1 and a blue. It's a 1/1 with flash. Other merfolk you control get +1/+1, and you can sacrifice a merfolk to counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1. This was definitely an addition. Zagana Utopian Speaker for 2, a green and a blue. When Zagana Utopian Speaker enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. You can pay 4, a green and a blue to adapt 4, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. Next up is Instants and Sorcery, just Instants. Starting with Aetherize for 3 and a blue. Return all attacking creatures to their owner's hand. Beast Within for 2 and a green. Destroy target permanent. Its controller gets a 3/3 green beast creature token. Counterspell for 2 blue. Counter target spell. Growth Spiral for a green and a blue. Draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Heroic Intervention for 1 and a green. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. This was an addition as well as the counterspell. Inspiring Call for 2 and a blue. Draw a card. For each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. Quandrix Command for 1, a green and a blue. Choose 2. Return target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand. Counter target artifact or enchantment spell. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library. Rapid Hybridization for 1 blue. Destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. That creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token. And then finally we have Ripples of Potential for 1 and a blue. Proliferate, then choose any number of permanents you control that had a counter put on them this way. Those permanents phase out. Alright, next up is sorceries. Starting with Bygone Marvels for 2 green. It has Descend 8. When you cast this spell, if there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, copy this spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. And it has return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand, exile Bygone Marvels. Curse of the Swine for X and 2 blue. Exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller creates a 2/2 green boar creature token. We have Explore for 1 and a green. You may play an additional land this turn. Draw a card. Kodama's Reach for 2 and a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards. Put 1 into your hand and 1 onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Ravenform for 2 and a blue. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying, and it has Foretell for 1 blue. Wave Goodbye for 2 and 2 blue. Return each creature without a +1/+1 counter on it to its owner's hand. Okay, next up is Artifacts. We have Arcane Signet for 2. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. We have Ozolith, the Shattered Spire for 1 and a green. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on instead. For 1 and a green, you can tap this to add a +1/+1 counter to target artifact or creature you control. Activate only as a sorcery. And this has Cycling for 2. This is an addition. Simic Signet. It costs 2. You can pay 1 and tap it to add green-blue. We have Soul Ring. It costs 1. You can tap this to add 2 colorless. And Swiftfoot Boots. It costs 2. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste, and it equips for 1. Next up is enchantments. We have Branching Evolution for 2 and a green. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put on that creature instead. Deeproot Pilgrimage for 1 and a blue. Whenever 1 or more non-token merfolk you control become tapped, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token with hexproof. This is an addition to the deck. Deeproot Waters for 2 and a blue. Whenever you cast a merfolk spell, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token with hexproof. Exploration for 1 green. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. This was an addition. Hardened Scales for 1 green. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put on it instead. Kindred Discovery for 3 and a blue, 3 and 2 blue. As Kindred Discovery enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. Path of Discovery for 3 and a green. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it explores. This is an addition to the deck. Reflections of Littjara for 4 and a blue. As Reflections of Littjara enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, copy that spell. Simic Ascendancy for green and a blue. For 1 and a green and a blue, you can put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Okay, next up is going to be non-basic lands. We're going to start with a Alchemist Refuge. For you can tap this for colorless. You can pay 1 green, 1 blue, and tap it to cast spells as if they had flash until end of turn. Breeding Pool, which is the shock land for blue-green, and it is an addition to the deck. Command Tower, which you can tap for any color in your commander's color identity. Deeproot Cascade, which is a check land for blue-green and an addition to the deck. Hinterland Harbor, which is another check land for blue-green. Karn's Bastion, which you can tap for colorless, or you can pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. Mosswort Bridge, which has Hideaway 4, enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it for green. You can also pay a green and tap it to play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if creatures you control have a total power of 10 or greater. Path of Ancestry enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add mana of any color, and whenever you cast a spell with a creature type that shares a type with your commander, you get to scry 1. Rejuvenating Springs, which is a crowd land for blue-green and an addition. Reliquary Tower, you have no maximum hand size, and you can tap it for colorless. Rogue's Passage, you can tap it for colorless, or you can pay 4 and tap it to give target creature unblockable until end of turn. Secluded Courtyard, as it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You can tap it to add colorless, or you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, spend that mana to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, or activate an ability of a creature of the chosen type. Simic Growth Chamber. This enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you have to bounce a land to your hand. You can tap it for green-blue. Temple of Mystery, which is the scry land for green-blue. Unclaimed Territory, as Unclaimed Territory enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You can tap 1 to add colorless, or you can tap 1 to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells of the chosen type. Vine-Glimmer Snarl, which is a reveal land for blue-green. And Yavimaya Coast, which is a pain land for blue-green and also an addition. And finally, we have our basic lands. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 forests. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 islands. Okay, so that is our Huckball, the Surging Soul deck tech. Mainly it's just a precon that was upgraded because the precon out of the box was already pretty good. With the few additions put in here, this deck can actually just pop off pretty consistently every time. So anyway, what ends up happening is this deck gets a ton of +1/+1 counters on it, and the creatures end up getting relatively large pretty consistently. So it becomes very aggro. You have the Explore mechanic to fall back on, which allows you to get more lands into play, but also filters through your deck to find cards that are I guess not more powerful, but more versatile than what is already in play. So that is the Huckball, the Surging Soul deck list. Yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave those down below, but keep it positive. I'll remove negative comments. And until next time, guys, peace.